Hi guys and girls, I'm Q&Ant and welcome to my latest episode of Q&Ant. This is my video series, which is essentially a big, huge thank you to all the supporters out there, both from Patreon, PayPal donations of course, and YouTube members. Now YouTube members and Patreon members are those people who basically help me out over there, get the opportunity every so often to submit some questions to me and topics and other suggestions that we get to discuss in these videos. And the video is available to everyone to watch because I don't really want to paywall the video, but it's a nice opportunity basically to show my appreciation to everyone and again say my thanks. So this video has been a little bit delayed, mostly because there's been a few issues with me, a number of family issues and a bunch of other things. I went into some detail on the Patreon post and the YouTube members post, so if you are members there you can go and check that all out. Otherwise it's something I don't really want to get into too much, but yeah, it's all good. So this month has been pretty busy. I do have a bunch of VR content coming up. I was fortunate enough to have Oculus reach out to me yet again. They sent me over an Oculus Quest, so we're going to be taking a look at that in the coming weeks. Really looking forward to trying that out and seeing how it works as a standalone unit, and then eventually trying out with Elite Dangerous using the Oculus Link. So let's get to these questions then. We've got a bunch of them from both Patreon as well as the YouTube members. And if, by the way, you do ever want to join over on Patreon or YouTube members, you can join as a YouTube member by simply clicking on the join button down below the video here, or have a look at the link in the video description to come on over and have a look at Patreon. And again, I extend my thanks to everyone that's helped out over the years. It is massively, massively appreciated. And really, this channel wouldn't be what it is today without your support. So my thanks again. So onto the questions. 712 has a bit of an extensive question here, and thank you again for your concern there. It does mean a lot. And I'll read a bit of the question out here. As to my question, I was wondering if you have some good games, possibly multiplayers, to recommend specifically to those like me who are very casual players. Something that can be enjoyed without the need to be constantly up to date in order to not be one-shotted by anyone who is lucky enough to have more time to play. So we get to that question first. There are a few games I could recommend along those sort of lines. Sea of Thieves is one I play a lot with the family. It's really, really a fun game. It doesn't really require you to keep up to date because basically everyone starts the game and remains on the same footing throughout. Basically, you can join the crew of a pirate ship in olden times and go around and do some bit of treasure hunting. Of course, there is a lot of PvP in it. If you get caught out, you might be sunk by other pirates, but that is part of the game's charm. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's something you can hop on and off with some friends. It's something that's got some wonderful environments with it. The oceans and the waves really are amazing and really need to be seen to be believed. And if you're fortunate enough to have them on high settings, I think you're going to feel that they're pretty interesting. The game loops themselves are somewhat limited though with Sea of Thieves, but it's still fun nonetheless. And if you've got access to the Microsoft's Xbox Game Pass for PC, you can get that included in the price. I believe the next one is also included in the Microsoft Game Pass, and the price I believe is £5 a month, and it's actually a really good service to be perfectly honest. So the other game I'd recommend for multiplayer is Ark, and I've got hundreds of hours in this one. It's actually a really good choice to play with friends. Now, it doesn't have to be competitive if you don't want it to be. It can be as competitive or non-competitive as you like. You can basically play it against the environment or against other players. This really would depend on the type of server that you join. There's a whole bunch of official servers, there's other private servers, and if you want to set up your own server, these can be picked up for just a few pounds a month, and they're very easy to run. Like I say, I've had hundreds of hours on this one, and it can certainly be very much pick up and play, or as deep as you like. One to keep an eye on. Warframe, of course, is also very good. I've talked about that in the past. I've spent quite a lot of time on this one, but to be perfectly honest, it does take a huge amount of time to get anywhere serious with it. So although it is pretty much entirely a PvE game, there are some PvP components, but I've never really touched them myself. It still nonetheless takes a lot of time, but again, another game that is well worth looking at. And Warframe, of course, is free to play. Now, the other subject that 712 has here is about creating a YouTube channel, specifically for funny moments in Worms Armageddon or tournaments thereof. So my advice there is definitely go for it. YouTube is well worth getting into, even if you just want to do it as a hobby, which it sounds like that's really what you want to do. So yeah, don't be put off by what may feel like massive hurdles to overcome. YouTube is fairly easy in a lot of ways once you get the content created, once you've edited the video, and if you want to do a bit of voice narration there, that's all good. There's a lot of people doing that, and it's certainly a lot of fun. The biggest hurdles are if you really want to grow the channel out, and if that's your plan, then again, certainly go for it. And my biggest recommendation there is be consistent. Whether you release a single video a week and just repeatedly keep releasing those videos on the same day each week, or whether you want to release 4, 5, 6 videos a week, try and be consistent, and eventually your YouTube channel will grow without a doubt. And you never know, you might hit it lucky and strike it big as well. So yep, my advice, definitely go for it if it's something you're interested in. Now, Avon NZ wants to know about my thoughts and feelings on space legs and atmospheric worlds, whether or not they'll be a part of the update that comes at the end of 2020. So yeah, you're perfectly spot on there. Personally, I'd much prefer to see atmospheric worlds as part of the update. If it come down to a choice between atmospheric worlds and space legs, I definitely prefer the former. That's because, as you rightly point out there, I do love to explore the galaxy, and basically having atmospheric worlds in there would dramatically enhance and raise the number of areas to go out there and explore. All the more so if eventually we get flora and fauna, but I'd imagine initially at least any such atmospheric worlds would probably be atmospheric rocky worlds, things without plants and stuff like that. Maybe water worlds would also open up, which would also be a very nice touch as well. But yeah, lots and lots to explore. But yeah, you're perfectly right as well. Space legs would add potentially a lot more gameplay in there. And I did go into this on a recent video regarding space legs about a week or so ago. So do check out the links in the video description, because I talk about my thoughts on the subject right there. But one thing I didn't touch on in that video with space legs was VR. So yeah, VR could be a potential hurdle and a big issue when it comes to space legs. Obviously, players who are sitting inside their ships tend to play the game via HOTAS. And when you jump outside the ship, when you jump outside and start walking around, what sort of control method would you use? Would you still use HOTAS and joystick? Would you use keyboard and mouse? Or maybe Oculus touch controllers, or the respective controllers that come with your headset? Or would it just be a gamepad? Or would you be able to use full room locomotion? Lots of options, lots of different things to consider. I don't think Frontier would go too in-depth with making it VR-centric, to be perfectly honest, because it's still a rather bit of a niche, and they'd rather focus on keeping the rest of the audience, or the bulk of the audience, interested in the game. So I think there's going to be some compatibility issues for sure between how VR works and how Space Legs works in general. But either way it goes, I really hope Frontier managed to figure this one out. But again, whether or not we do get space legs and the associated things to go with it is something we're just going to have to wait and see. But fingers crossed, it's something I'm certainly looking forward to. So then, moving on to Commander Jinx Chrome, and again, thank you for your concern. Yeah, it seems that you feel I've sounded a little bit frustrated in some of my recent videos. To be perfectly honest, I'm not really sure what videos you're getting at there. I don't think I've had too many in the way of negative videos over recent times, so I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Am I disappointed? Am I frustrated with Elite Dangerous? No more so than I ever have been with the game. I've obviously been with the game ever since it released in 2014, actually before its release in 2014, and there's always been niggles and issues with the game, things that I wish were done a little bit better, and things that I would like to see happen faster or sooner. But as for the game overall, well, again, I don't really see where you're feeling I'm frustrated with things. But what would I like to see in Elite to make me more happy? Well, if we're talking about the game specifically here, and not Frontier and their communication or future content updates, but the current game we've got right now and the changes that could be made to it, well, two of the things that I personally would like to see is a change in the way travel works and a change in the commodities market and the associated tools. Now, to deal with the first one, basically I'd like to see travel times sped up when it comes to travelling locally in Super Cruise from the first few thousand light years. The gravity worlds are a real pain here and seem to needlessly slow down travel time. And I'd like to see travel time sped up when it comes to travelling across the galaxy. I'd then like to see that time replaced with more involved gameplay. So, for example, to go back to an initial idea that was discussed in the very early days of development for Elite Dangerous, the galaxy could be covered with a fog of war. So any stars that have never been visited before would just not be visible, and that players, through various game mechanics, would have to figure out jump routes to these hidden stars. And maybe your jump there would be successful, or maybe it wouldn't, and if it wouldn't, then maybe you'd end up somewhere random, or maybe you'd simply end up damaged. This then would add an element of skill to the travelling across the galaxy, rather than making it a constant repetitive slog. I do love exploration, I've always said that, and I still do, but I do feel that Frontier could do a lot more to make it more interesting and more involved. Now, also the supercruise travel, I'd like to see the gravity wells go away and us be able to travel at the first few thousand light years much faster. And then to help maintain the sense of scale and vastness within space, I do believe that certain things, new things, could be placed further out into various star systems. So all the existing stuff remains where it is, and then if you want to explore, you simply travel hundreds and thousands of light seconds away from the central star, and you never know what you're going to find. Also, rogue planets would be pretty nice. That's planets that have no star, they've kind of fled away from any star system and are abandoned and lost in the galaxy. Things such as that I think would be a really nice addition. The tools I've spoken about fairly recently, I don't really want to go over that again, so I'll link that in the video description. That's the trading tools. I do think that they have a long way to be improved to make Elite Dangerous a rather enjoyable trading game, because this is where it stands right now. There's some significant hurdles. So Gert also talks about the same sort of subject that we just touched on there, about travel times. They feel that the constant travelling and the lengthy travel times really don't add anything to the game, and I'm inclined to agree with you there. I think we still need to maintain the sense of scale and a sense of vastness to space, but I do fully believe there's many other ways of doing this. I mean, in the background as I'm talking here, you can see footage from Space Engine, and there's literally hundreds of billions of galaxies in the game right here, or in the software. And despite the fact that you can travel so fast, many tens of thousands the speed of light, it never impacts the sense of scale or the sense of wonder that Space Engine actually has. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, I really don't believe that reduced travel times or slow travel times, lengthy travel times, however you want to look at it, are actually required to convey a sense of scale. And as proof, I'd cite Space Engine as a concept for that. After all, it really doesn't matter how fast you can travel. What is there, 400 billion star systems in the Milky Way galaxy and Elite Dangerous, and literally trillions upon trillions of planets. So it really doesn't matter how fast you can travel, you can never visit all of these. Time is still the limiting factor. So again, to reiterate my point earlier, rather than just having the slow travel times where you're not really doing anything in between at one location and the next, it would be nice to just add creative gameplay there instead. Now, Alex Turner talks about Frontier's live streams. If Frontier's community managers asked me or asked you what you'd like them to cover in the future Thursday night live streams, what would I ask for? Bear in mind that anything along the lines of tell us about 2020 would be met with a blank response. So I agree with you there. I don't think Frontier really need to talk about every single live stream, hit on the subjects of fleet carriers or space legs and other such things. But what I would like to see is Frontier talking about their ongoing development. What are they doing right now? What have they done this week? What did they do last week? What are the developers' current thoughts and feelings on the way certain gameplay or a certain game mechanic is actually working right now? I think there's plenty of room for Frontier to start discussing these things, and I really don't think that this would give players unreasonable expectations about future content. After all, Frontier would just be given insight as to their current workflow. Obviously, I don't know the insides of Frontier, so I don't know why they don't do these sort of things, but sitting here from the outside, I don't really see why they couldn't do this or shouldn't do it. I think it would be a very nice change for those Thursday night live streams. I think a lot of people would actually enjoy it, and I really do feel people would love the extra insight in there. So, moving on, Vincent Chu has some questions from the Mobius Facebook group. Am I going to ECM this year? That's the Elite Community Meet. So yes, I do plan on going there. I haven't got the tickets just yet. There's just a couple of other things I need to make sure are out the way. And as long as the schedule's clear, I should certainly be able to come. So Alan D wants to know when we can expect an Obsidian Ant voice pack or Coverse. Well, I don't think there'll ever be an official Coverse, but there is an Obsidian Ant HCS voice pack. You can see that on the HCS website. I recorded that 2-3 years ago, maybe. You can see a link to that. I'll drop it in the video description if you're interested. If we can name our fleet carrier support ships, What, will you do a poll and let your community name yours? Yeah, I don't see why not, Jamie. That's a really good idea, actually. Yeah, remind me near the time and I'll go for that, I think. So, Fred R says, despite its immense size and immersive content, many refer to Elite Dangerous as being as wide as an ocean and as shallow as a pond. In other words, while it may seem to have much to do, it's fairly repetitive and simple in execution. Do you believe, or what do you believe would be a good step for Elite to take in order to improve this perception? So this really is a bit of a problem with this style of online game. They do have a lot of repetitive content. And I've said it before, some of the repetitive nature of the content, particularly with some of the progress bars that Elite Dangerous has, shares a lot in similarity with free-to-play games. So it's a little bit unclear to me why Frontier have chosen this option, really, other than to say I do believe it's perhaps an easier development choice to go for this type of games, especially in a game that's as complex as Elite Dangerous structurally, because there's a lot of moving parts here. So I guess certain gameplay loops need to fit into easier development frames in order to maintain the complexity of the galaxy. So what do I feel Frontier could do to improve this? I think Frontier could, again, going back to that complexity of the galaxy, perhaps the single largest asset, both in size as well as scope, is the galaxy itself. I do feel Frontier have not made as much use of this as they perhaps could when it comes to gameplay. I'd love to see much more being done about this. There's a huge amount of depth that could be added there. I've spoken about the changes this could be done with exploration, for example. And I know I'm referring to a bunch of old videos here. This is the third time in this video, so I do apologise for that. But it kind of saves me going over 10 minutes of old conversations if I link it again in the video description. So I did talk about improvements to exploration mechanics. This was before the Chapter 4 updates, which did improve it somewhat, but also discussed some other things I'd love to see. Frontier making better use of the Milky Way galaxy for exploration. So I'll link that again in the video description. But yeah, I really do think Frontier could do well to focus on the galaxy itself rather than repetitive game loops. There's a lot they could do with that. When not playing Elite, what does Obsidian Ant do for downtime? What are his other interests other than Elite? So I'm a big fan of Warhammer. I do a lot of Warhammer 40,000. I've got a bunch of different armies. In fact, I'm planning on doing a few videos on that at some point. Not on this channel though. I'll probably set up a different channel for that. But yeah, you'll be able to see that at some point. But both the painting and creating of the models as well as some gameplay itself. I love the tabletop gaming. Also like photography. I've got a couple of DSLRs, but I really don't get as much chance to go out and take the photos as I would like. That's something I hope I get more time in the future perhaps for that. Also, I'm still a big gamer. When I'm not playing Elite, I do play other games. I've got a Nintendo Switch, which is perhaps my favourite gaming platform. I really do like some of the proper old school Nintendo games. Also really like JRPGs and Pokemon as well, would you believe it? Now, over on YouTube members, Bruce D wants to know my thoughts on various Starship bridge simulators. So there's a bunch of these out there. Bruce says that there's testing Starship Horizons. And of course, Starship simulators fit squarely in the Artemis category of games, which basically are a whole bunch of people working from different workstations or different computers in a singular room, usually, acting as bridge crew on a ship like one of those from Star Trek, all working together to achieve set goals. So Bruce is quite right. This would be something I should do some research on and talk about a bit more in the future. It's something I'd actually like to make a specific video on at a later date, so do keep an eye out for that. Thanks for the suggestion, Bruce. Further, although it's not quite a Starship Bridge Simulator in the vein that you're discussing, I have played quite a bit of Star Trek Bridge Crew. That's a VR game, or VR for the most part now, or you can play it in non-VR. That's a game I really do like, and when you get the right sort of crew out there, it works really, really well. So I think there's a lot of room for these type of games. Something I'll come back to at a later date then, that's for sure. So then, that pretty much brings me to an end of this video. Once again, thank you to everyone who's supported me over the years. That's both on Patreon, from PayPal, as well as on YouTube members. And of course, thank you to all the subscribers and all of you who continue to watch my channel. It really is a massive part of my life and means a lot to me. So thank you very, very much. As always, thanks for watching. And I'll catch you guys and girls next time.